So even though I've had my Yukon build for a few months now that I have all the parts, it's time to really get serious. I give myself 4 days to get this job done. We already had the bodywork done on the truck itself, and while I was screwing around with the dirt and ollie, I had them do the bodywork on this fender that we're gonna use. I'm gonna pull it all apart, hand it off to my painter, he'll edge it out so we can throw it all back together. It's gonna be a 4-day job. I will have to do it on the weekends, so it's actually gonna take 9 days total. But for 5 of those days, nothing's gonna happen to it. So since I gave myself an aggressive deadline, we need to bring in the whole team. So you guys all know Mr. Spotty. He's in charge of cinematography. We got Crazy Eyes here. He's in charge of panel alignment and quality control. And then we got Slim. He gets in those hard to reach places.
First thing we're going to do is trip the latch in the tailgate. This is electronic, and once we disconnect everything, it's going to be a pain to try and open that tailgate. We're going to store parts in the car, so we're going to be constantly going in and out of it. I always forget that, and I always regret it later. We're going to tear down our Yukon and get all the parts we need off of it, as well as get everything else ready so that I can sell it or use it on something else. So now we're going to need the taillight for our other Yukon, so we're just going to take that out. I need the driver's airbag. There's 2 holes in the back of the steering wheel. Put an Allen wrench in there, and there's a couple little bars you just push in. They're hard to find, takes a little while and some patience. So now we're going to take our seats out. It's much easier to move them when we have power, so we're just going to unbolt them. We don't need them for our build, but we might want to sell them or need them for another vehicle. We'll put all our little covers back on so we don't lose them. And these actually have 4 bolts in them. They don't have the slots in the front like the newer Chevy trucks. And we want to see what kind of prizes we get. They seem to be giving out awards pretty easy these days. All I had to do was remove a seat to get this one. I'll pull the driver's side off. See how much money we can recoup on this build from underneath the seats. Got some candy too. Score. I'll pull the console out. Pull the center out and get to all the plugs inside. There's actually no bolts on it. It's bolted down by the seats themselves. So you just lift it out. Now it's time to start tearing the truck down for the parts we're going to need. We'll discharge the AC first. Pretty simple. You just hook it up, press some buttons, and it does it all by itself. So you find something else to do while it's discharging. Had a full charge in it. Pretty good for a 12-year-old truck. Now we can disconnect our hoses. Pull our front bumper off. We're going to need that for the other truck. Couple bolts in the bottom. Disconnect our fog light wires. Now we can unbolt the top of the bumper. Not sure why I left it in the air for this. Add to the struggle. I'll pull the rear bumper off. We have to take this off to get the frame out from under it. Disconnect the parking sensors. That harness will stay with the bumper. I'll disconnect the wheel liner on the driver's side. Couple bolts underneath. Couple clips and bolts across the top. Now our rear cover is off. Now we're going to disconnect the ground wires that go onto the frame from the body. And the taillight harness that goes to the frame. And the washer fluid line for the rear gate. I'll pull our filler neck out. 3 screws. Don't drop them in the tank. Pull the headlights out. We're going to need this headlight for our build. And we're going to need this headlight out of our way. I'll pull the closeout panel off the top. We'll need the bumper support bracket off. We're going to need this for our build. Take the hood latch off. It's easier to store the radiator support when it doesn't have that thing sticking off of it. Now we're going to take the lower bumper bracket off, bumper support. I'm not even sure what that piece does actually. Take the hood off. The afternoon crew showed up today. So now we're going to do everything underneath. Disconnect the shift cable. Just pops off, squeeze the tabs, pull it through. And we'll take it out of park. We have it out of park so we can rotate it like that, make it a little easier. Pop the U-joint out. Try not to lose the caps unless you like hide and go seek. Hide and go seek with needle bearings is expert level. Disconnect the e-brake cable. Of course, my favorite tool. Can't do any job without it. Now to take it out of the frame, we'll just use our wrench. Squeeze all those 3 tabs in there. 13 millimeter, 1/2 inch will work. Now we'll unbolt the trans mount from the frame. Now we're onto the front drive shaft. This is all stuff that we could do when the body's off, but it's just easier to do it when I can stand up underneath it instead of climbing underneath it. I only have one lift and the body's going to be on it. Now we're going to pull the running boards off. I need a place to put the lift arms underneath the body, and the running board is in my way. So we'll just pull it off. It's like 9 or 10 bolts, pretty easy. Pull the other running board off. Now we'll start pulling everything apart under the hood. Take the air box out. Take the plate underneath the air box out. Overflow bottle. Unbolt the bracket for the fender. Put the bolts back in it so we don't lose them. Now the bracket for the battery tray. And unbolt the battery itself. Take it out of our way. Then we take the battery tray out. We're going to need all this stuff for our build. Pull the heater hoses off. Disconnect the AC lines. We're going to disconnect the AC lines from the body. Some go to the motor, some go to the condenser. They're all going to different places. So this line we're going to take all the way out. The other ones we just have to disconnect. Now we're going to pull the fender off. I've been demoted to the bucket holder. Now we're going to unbolt the core support. Since we took the fender off, it will no longer be supported when we lift the body off. We're going to disconnect the ground strap that goes to the motor. Disconnect the brake booster. Unbolt the master cylinder. We don't have to take the lines off. We can leave them on the master itself. Take the support bracket in the corner there off. Looks like another battery tray. I think it is on these trucks that have that option. ECM out of the way. Pull the electrical box out. Didn't quite come out the way it's supposed to. All the plugs on the bottom are supposed to stay in the lower bracket. So now we gotta pull them out. Now it's out. Now we can take that lower bracket off. Disconnect the other 2 harnesses that are underneath it. Now we can disconnect the radiator support from the frame. slide it out of the way. I already done the radiator hoses and power steering cooler lines. Couldn't get the camera in there to show them to you. I'll take our radiator support out of the way. The wiring harness just stays with it. I unplugged it when I unplugged the box. Now we can disconnect our steering shaft. That'll go with the body from the rack and pinion. Disconnect our power steering lines from the rack and pinion. These are going to go with the engine. Disconnect the wires to the fuse. One goes to the alternator, one goes to the starter, and one goes to the junction box on the other side. Now we can unbolt the body. There's 3 along the side, 2 right above the rear end, and 2 in the back. Lots of sand in this car. You don't have to take them all the way out. Leave them in the little plastic that holds them in. I don't know what condition mine are going to be in, but I suspect those mounts might be rusted on mine. Now it's time to pull the body off. Little by little, checking to make sure we got everything. Once you rip a wiring harness in half, you learn the hard way. Take your time. Things like to get snagged. Got everything on the first try. Lift it up just enough to roll the frame out from underneath it. We can disconnect our engine. Look at that, exhaust bolts you can take off without heat. This is why I love Southern vehicles. You don't see that in Illinois. I will disconnect the engine mounts, or motor mounts. And yes, it is a motor. Pull our fuel lines off. I'm not sure if they're the same as our other truck, but I do know they're really clean, so I'm going to save them. If I can use them and our other ones are rusty, then I'll have some nice clean lines to use. Now we can lift the engine, transfer case out, all as an assembly. We got our front drive shaft bungee corded up out of the way. Wiring harness, everything goes with. I could hook up some fuel and some power to this thing and it would start right up. Left a little trail of antifreeze so we can find our way back. Now we're going to pull the exhaust crossover pipe off, just so it's easier to store. It'll sit nice and flat on the trans pan and oil pan. With this exhaust in a way, it's kind of like a rocking horse. And these bolts just come off so easy, I couldn't resist. Like I said, if you're in Illinois and you try to do this, you're using heat. Probably breaking studs off. It's not fun. Now we'll pull the gas tank out, disconnect the breathers, unplug all the sensors and the pump, disconnect the 2 fuel lines, disconnect the vent valve, pull the filler neck off. Now we can unbolt the straps. There's a jack underneath it holding it up. Let the jack down. And snag it on the rear end. It always gets stuck. So you gotta pull it forward so it can pass the rear end. Then slide it back so it can pass the frame. I'll pull the exhaust off. Just push it off the hangers. Chase the frame. We're going to have to pull some suspension parts off to get that out of there. It's supposed to go on before the rear end, but we're not going to take the rear end out, but I do want to have the exhaust out of our way. So now we can set our body back down, just so we have a place to store it in all one piece for right now. I'm not going to bolt it down. It's just going to sit there. It's just a lot easier to move around like this. So next week all we'll have to do is back it on a lift it off, and our frame will be ready to go. We'll hand our fender off to our painter. He'll get it all edged out. We're going to use all of our original stuff off of our red truck, with the exception of what was actually damaged in the accident. We'll use our fuel lines and brake lines off this truck if they're in better shape and the same, but I won't know until I get the other one apart. So the plan is just to switch everything out next week and have it all back together. We'll see how that works out. Because if it's one thing you learn when rebuilding cars, it's things never go according to plan. So like the video if you found it interesting. Share it if you think somebody else might. Subscribe if you want to see the rest of this build. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.